you can honor each other in different places and stages and still have a fulfilling relationship. You know what I mean? And I know you met me when I already did have kids. So, in this previous relationship, I didn't have kids. We were, in our 20s, and then and then I did have kids, and then it did change things. It just doesn't have to, but it is okay if it does. And then that can continue, maybe the divide continues, and then it is what it is. That is all okay.
Yeah, I guess we should just say welcome back. It's been a while.
A little bit,
took a summer break, a hiatus to get out there and live, laugh, love. Yeah. I guess.
Yeah.
Have some breakdowns.
I mean, what's a summer without a breakdown?
Exactly. So yeah, Crystal, Jen, and Marcus getting ready here to just kind of catch up. So, let's tell the people a little bit about what's happened since we last recorded, whenever that was. Could have been in June.
Yeah, I think
it was in June. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was summer break in July. Mm-hmm. August, I was in Europe.
Yeah.
Not the whole month, but
yeah.
And then here we are, falling back into it. No pun intended. Or maybe a pun intended.
I love a pun.
I do love a pun too.
Oh, I think it's so witty.
So, I think, there are seasons, literal seasons.
Yeah.
But also I think seasons in our life and seasons in friendships as well.
Yeah. Seasons in relationships, right? But friendships being one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember, my therapist actually telling me, there are reasons and seasons, Crystal, for everything. And we were actually talking in relationship to friendship breakups. Yeah. She and I. And at the time, I didn't really have the words for that's what it was. Yep. And it was very hard. And it's several years later, and it's still very difficult because, these people were integral to my life and significant parts of it. But like she said, reasons and seasons. And I think that happens as we continue to not only get older, right? For sure. We change. Yep. And sometimes our friendships can adapt and change with that and grow and continue to evolve. And sometimes people are who we knew when we were who we were. Right.
And we met them in a certain chapter or space in our life of where we were, and them as well. Right.
Right.
And sometimes we're on the receiving end of a breakup. And sometimes we're on the initiating end of a breakup. And sometimes we know and sometimes we don't in regards to friendships. And I think there's this overarching narrative that things last forever, or relationships last forever. And while we're more comfortable understanding that, breakups happen in intimate relationships, it doesn't seem to be kind of general knowledge that friendships also have breakups as well. And they're not as definitive, right? I think in intimate relationships, even if it's no one did anything wrong, it doesn't just kind of phase out usually, and then you're just like, oh, I guess we're broken up. But sometimes that's how friendships end, right? We're like, oh, we don't talk as much, and oh, I don't think they respond to my texts as much, or I haven't checked in with them, or I'm initiating that, but having it kind of fade into the background. We don't do goodbyes well. We don't do breakups well because there is this kind of discomfort, I think, with finality, even though it's actually very much normal to have things
come to an end
because of wherever we were. I think that also folds into the narrative of things don't change, right? This doesn't change. You're supposed to be the same as you were 25 years ago, but that's silly and ridiculous. We do in fact change, which means that so do our jobs. So do our relationships with intimate partners. So do our friendships. So do our family relationships. It all changes. We know that, or we experience it, but we don't always have the language for it. and the society doesn't acknowledge it, doesn't make it. So your therapist says, oh, there's reasons and seasons, Crystal. And you're like, oh.
That was really an aha moment. And that was pretty early in our time together. I started with her in like May of 2019, mostly work-related stuff. And then, you know, as you get into therapy, anybody else who's been in talk therapy is currently in talk therapy. Once you start peeling back one layer, then you realize that there are other things, because it's all a foundation, right? Everything kind of multiplies or builds upon each other. And when I went to Costa Rica for a yoga retreat in July of that year, so just a couple of months later, I remember talking to the girls or women that I was with, and said that reasons and seasons, and it was all like an aha moment to us. And you're right, there is this idea that something is supposed to be forever, and I think that speaks to the larger cultural narrative of a friend that you made in 4th grade, you're supposed to be friends with for the rest of your life. And if you're not, well, that's a problem, because you're supposed to know people and collect friends, I guess, if you will, from all of the stages of your life, which is absolutely 100% true for some folks. And I think I found for myself, and this is a continual thing, so I'll be 45 in a couple of months, and my lens through which I see friendship is a lot different. And when I was younger, in my 20s, you know, it was the thought of the more friends I have, the better, because people like me, right? I'm acceptable, I'm worthy, we go out and do all these things, and it was a lot of fun. And then as I've gotten older, I've realized that quality or quantity isn't better than quality, and that as I've gotten more in tune with, I am an introvert and an empath, and all of those things I've felt my whole life but didn't have the words for, I realized that less is best in pretty much all aspects of life is something that I'm learning now, you know, to minimize. And having a quality friendship with one person beats having superficial friendships with 5 people.
Right. And I think that, you know, when we're in our 20s, right, we're doing you know, for some of us, I'm obviously not speaking for everybody, but I'll speak for myself, and I believe you as well. That, you know, we're in our 20s, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, or what we're told that we're supposed to be doing. No one sits down and says it specifically, but we do understand what we should be doing is gathering friends, being social, being liked, being palatable, right? And doing the things, whether that's like whatever, you know, is decided to be appropriate for 20-something-year-old girls. And then I think women. And then as we get older, for some, right, there's a awareness of like, wait, I don't want to do that. Why was I doing that? I'm not sure that even fits my personality.
I'm not the go out to drinking, you know, on a Friday night person anymore, or, you know,
was I ever, but everyone else was.
Right.
So
let's get in the car at 10 p.m. and drive to the beach to go out. And for me right now, thinking about that, it's a literal nightmare and I want to cry. But when I was 25, sure enough, I remember my mom saying to me when I was home from college on breaks, or, you know, for the summer, and my friends and I would go out, and, you know, she would I still lived at home until, you know, after college, and what time are you going? I was like, oh, well, maybe 9:30, 10. And she was like, isn't that late? I was like, Mom, that's when things are just starting. Now, if somebody asked me that, look, I'm already in my comfy clothes, been in my comfy clothes. And the answer is no, thank you.
It's a hard no.
It's a hard pass. Can't we just sit at home on the couch? And
fall asleep during the show like we're supposed to.
Exactly.
But I know that comes with age too, right? And like, and just shifts in priorities. But I just think that sometimes, you know, who we were in our 20s, who we are in our 30s, who we are, and who we'll continue to be will shift because our priorities shift.
And our perspectives shift. Our experiences shift. Our knowledge, awareness.
And our experiences inform our perspective sometimes, right? So you went to this life-changing yoga retreat, which kind of shifted a lot of things in you. And then you're like, oh, this is important. And then you start to go down that road. Or, of course, you engaged in a life-changing, decisions career-wise. And I joked with you the other day that, like, Crystal, a few years ago, who still worked at Victim Services, if we told her this is what you're going to be doing, she would have punched you in your face, right? Or, like, been like, get out of here. But that is what happened based on life experiences. So the Crystal of, 6 years ago may have done things and hung out places and had perspectives that have ultimately shifted, whether it be because of death of your mom, and that being a big catalyst for a lot of things. But in general, you are just simply a different person because of experience. And if we can make that a more normalized truth, because that is the truth. People change. People have experiences that shift their perspective. People just aren't necessarily meant to be exactly the same as they were when they were 9 to who they are at like 45.
Right, exactly. And I think that, even Jen from 6 years ago would have never thought that she could just continue to have a private practice, but not
do direct service.
Service in seeing clients.
Yeah.
It's all scary, and it's all, if we really thought about stuff a lot and we could talk ourselves out of anything, which, I personally tried to do for myself in the shift that I made. And I know you did, because you tried a couple of times.
Yeah.
And
even sometimes that little nagging voice does still come back up, like, shouldn't you be doing? And then I have to remind myself.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that since, I always talk about death and grief, this is just another form of death, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yep. Sometimes
like a shedding of a skin, really, whether you want to call it an awakening, a shift, a rebirth,
evolution.
I don't think I would want to be the person I was even 5 years ago.
Yeah, same.
And so I'm glad that these shifts have happened, that I've had this, death and rebirth of my ideologies and who I am and what I'm able to stand in my truth about, and have a platform and feel comfortable and confident about that. And I think that if you're open to it, that's the only way it's going to happen, right? Like,
yes.
Change is fucking hard, dude.
It is. It's hard. It's scary. I resist it.
I'm resistant to change. For those who know me, I do like a routine. I like a schedule. I can be a little rigid with Predictability.
Yeah.
It's all about anxiety and having control. And when I'm caught off guard, it really can change everything for me. It overwhelms me.
It feels unsafe.
It feels overwhelming. And, I've had to sit with that to figure out, why am I so jarred by having a change, or not being asked if I would like to do X and assume that I want to, or that it's okay if we do this, even though we, as a group decided to do this. Case in point, Jen and I had some topics that we were gonna, talk about today, and there was a new topic that was introduced prior to the podcast,
like minutes before.
Right, and Jen's like, do we want to talk about that? I'm like, no, I already am prepared for these other two. And, I came to the conclusion of the reason why it catches me off guard so much and that I'm overwhelmed is because that there have been so many parts of my life and things in my life that I've had no control over, and I had to adapt and do whatever. It had to be done. Case in point, when I had my previous job, I had an on-call rotation, and not just being on call, but throughout the day, if an event came up and I had to go to like a crime scene or a hospital, do a death notification, anything like that, whatever I had planned for my day got shifted and changed to deal with whatever this thing was. And that was until it was done. So even if that was 10 o'clock at night, here's what I'm having to do. So
it's been a long time of not having
choice in a lot of stuff.
Your own life.
Even, you know, and being on call. If you get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning, you have to take it, talk to that person. And if you get called out, which called out means going to something at 2 o'clock in the morning, you have to be ready. And you know, we had to be ready to leave our house within like 15 minutes of getting the phone call. So
it's just like you're really at the mercy of someone else dictating your life, even if you quote unquote signed up for it, right? Like to say you signed up for this. It's the actual lived experience is like actually, you know, really like you can have a life, but it feels as though when you're on call, it's especially like you're just at the mercy of something.
It was difficult for me. Not everybody has that experience. It wasn't great for me at all. It exacerbated my mental, or, you know, kind of played into my mental health, like problem. I don't want to say problems, but it affected me. It affected me significantly, and it exacerbated anxiety that I joked about having. And then really it's still a thing, but,
well, now you don't, you know, that's not your life anymore. And you finally, you know, you did it for so long. And then until you stop doing it, you go, oh my gosh, like that's what I lived through. And that's what I did as my job because it was the job. That's what I was
in a constant state of
hypervigilance
and fight, flight, or freeze all of the time, and overstimulation, and, you know, leaving traditional employment to have a more flexible schedule to heal, to grow, to just kind of wrap my head around the life that I have now that my mom is dead, and
like try to get safe again,
to get safe again. And to have some control really over my life and my schedule and my routine. And I mean, that's even so much as if I don't have a routine, I feel a little bit untethered. And that's something I'm always trying to figure out. And by a routine, I mean, when you are an entrepreneur, I guess, if you will, a small business owner, for me, I'll speak personally, I don't have a lot of structure in my time because I have been ingrained for all of my life since I was 16 until I was 42. That you go to work, you work these times, and then when you're done, you're done if you don't have like on call or what have you. And so it was already structured for me. And now if I'm not teaching or having sessions, I have quote unquote more free time, which really I like, but also I am trying to establish more of like a base of a routine of like, okay, well, I'll set a time aside for this, or answering emails, or creating content, or all of the things that go along with that. And it's just a constant adjustment. And it makes sense, like, you know, why you're aware of it. I think when we're aware of the things, sometimes we are like, yeah, I guess I need to work on that. Other times we just accept it about ourselves. Like, I don't like to be caught off guard for real. So that's just me, right? And that's who I mean, like in regards to you, like that's just who I am. I could work on it. I know exactly where it comes from. I don't care. And I didn't know where it came from until I was able to actually take time and space to think about that. And, you know, and thinking about the end of friendships, or, you know, those friendship breakups, those are another, those can be jarring as well. Surprising. Especially if in your world, you didn't think anything was wrong, right? Things were fine. They were status quo. But it speaks to the larger issue of lack of communication. Communication is hard.
Or even having direct communication as a woman or a person who identifies as a female, because we're not encouraged to have direct communication, especially around conflict or something that's going to like maybe hurt your feelings, or you know, we're just supposed to be nice is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, you You are polite all of the time. I was just listening to Busy Phillips's podcast, which I listen to weekly. And when they started, it was 3 of them, Busy, Casey, and Shantira. And Shantira, they all 3 of them worked on Busy Tonight, Busy's talk show that didn't last very long. Because, hashtag being a woman. But anyway, Shantira was a guest this week on the podcast, and they were all catching up. And something that she said really landed with me is don't polite yourself out of what you deserve. For example, you're on vacation with a bunch of girls, and there's one room that has like the big bathroom and the tub, and you want to take a bath, and all of us typically, if you can even put yourself in this situation, oh no, you should have it. Really, you do XYZ. And if there's this like comparative need, I guess, if you will, of like who has it the worst, who needs it more, which I get that, but also we're all deserving of it. And I think that sometimes it's hard to be the person to say, yeah, I want that room. I want the bathtub. And
so pointedly,
yes,
I'm going to,
be indirect.
I would like it.
Be indirect. And then that may come with its own set of like repercussions or, what have you. Don't you think she was a little bitchy?
Yes.
Or how dare she?
I guess she's more deserving.
Right. She doesn't have children. Like, she doesn't need a break to take a bath. So, again, it just speaks to our culture of, pitting women against each other and the shrinking and politing ourselves out of things.
Yeah,
and
especially just specifically niceness. Like, we talk about, or they talk about kindness versus niceness, and niceness is performative. Like, we were being nice saying you can have it, but what do I really want it though? So it's really performative. I just want to be seen as nice, and I want to be seen as not
disagreeable
or selfish, right?
Or selfish.
Self-centered.
That's it's true in all aspects. If you're with a group of friends and it's like, well, where do you want to go eat? Or even with your partner, where do you want to eat? Well, I don't care. Where do you want to eat? Well, I don't know. I don't want to make the wrong decision kind of stuff.
Right. And it's almost like we don't know how to even, be, because we've been following this
well, it's also a trauma response, right? Like, of having to walk on eggshells or not wanting to disappoint the other person by asking what you do want or don't want, and you still want somebody to like you. And it really is just, it's all a lot.
It is a lot, and it's all just nonsense. If we all just said, like, this is what I want. And it's interesting we're hitting on this, and I know we did talk about starting his friendship breakups,
which is all part of it.
This is all part of it. But my daughter is 11, almost 11, right? And so she's in this tween era. And besides the fact that we've always just felt this is important to raise her, I am not raising my daughter to be nice. I am raising her to be secure, or we are raising her to be secure, confident, and aware of her own needs. Not only is she a female, she's also a female of color. So there's a lot that comes with that I can only know so much about up to a point and speak on, because I am still a white woman while she is a mixed girl. But I feel it's even more important to not indoctrinate her, you know what I mean, into believing that. So will society reinforce it? Absolutely. But at home, it's like we're building up the resistance, essentially, to this BS that she's going to get for being a girl and being a girl of color, that, like, I'm sorry you're uncomfortable, that I don't want to spend time with you, but I need to take care of myself now. And this idea that if you reject somebody, and it's not even actually rejecting them, it's just taking care of your own needs, that you are going to hurt their feelings. Well, my boundaries should not be translatable to hurting your feelings. It shouldn't be internalized. In fact, you really shouldn't center yourself in it. Maybe, yes, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. Maybe you get on my nerves, or maybe, sir, you do make me uncomfortable and I don't want to be around you. But if I'm stating, no thanks, I'd rather do this, and then you have reactions to that person hurting your feelings, we're not playing into that. We're not going to encourage her to betray her own needs so that she doesn't hurt other people's feelings and takes care of them first. It doesn't mean we're raising her not to be conscious and aware. She's quite empathetic. She's quite aware of other people's feelings. We just don't want her to compromise herself and what she needs to take care of the other people. And I think that can be a way, right? And then also if the person feels rejected, they can share that with her. And it's also a beautiful opportunity for them to explore why that feels rejecting, what is going on there, and have like healthy communication around that. Because the reality is you will be rejected in life. People will not always want to hang out with you. It doesn't mean you have to internalize it though, right? That you have to be like, I must be terrible. You can if you want. Or you can also offer alternative narratives. Maybe she doesn't like me. Maybe I am unlikable. Maybe we're just not each other's brands and that's okay. Or maybe I just really liked her, but she doesn't like me. That's hard to sit with. It's hard for many adults to sit with. But we have to, because if like our objective in life is not to just be liked and to do whatever we can to make sure that everybody likes us, and we're 20 something, or it's not just 20, anybody who's like, I have 45 friends. Well, great. Do you feel solid as a human, or like, what does that really bring you? So I don't know. I just feel like there's a deliberateness around that, and it's not just all or nothing, right? Because our society loves to be like, oh, so you're teaching her to be unkind and unfriendly and not care about people. No, I'm teaching her to be secure in who she is as a person. She's already actually acutely aware of other people. So it's another kind of, hey, don't forget you. Don't forget sometimes that, your battery's depleted, because people automatically are attracted to her and want to tell them about their lives. And it's often a one-sided conversation where they're not checking in with her, and it's not a balanced friendship, which we're not going to encourage unbalanced friendships, right? We're not going to say, oh, you should just keep listening because you're a good listener. We're going to ask about reciprocity. We're going to ask about how they ask about you, because those relationships aren't fulfilling. Yes, even at 11. This is a healthy dynamic of sharing in what's going on. Not in every single scenario does it be like me, you, me, you. No, it's just that overall, is there a balance? That's something that she should be conscious of. We should be conscious of.
You and I talk about it all the time, really, with our friendship, especially the trials and tribulations of the past couple of years, where we've both had some significant events happen in our life outside of, my mom dying and your house burning down. We've had some major things occur. And I think both of us, because again, we've been indoctrinated to be polite and don't take up space and don't be too much, are often, when we do have something happening and we're talking or we're texting a very lengthy text, I'm sorry for throwing all of that at you. I'm sorry for putting this, you didn't ask for that this early in the morning, or, you're going through X. But I think the difference being is that you and I are acutely aware of that. And it is that reciprocity of, it's like a seesaw. When one of us is being weighed down and having some heavy stuff, the other one is there to balance it out and lift up and listen, and vice versa. And then sometimes we're both
we're both
down in the dumps and we both talk about it, but it's not comparative.
No, right? It's not even competitive, right?
It's not competitive. It's not comparative. Which is hard to do sometimes. And that's even true with grief. Comparative grief of your grief is worse than mine because X happened, or mine is worse than yours because you didn't know that person that much, or what have you, or just your house burned down. My mom died, your house just burned down.
Right.
Which that's nothing that she and I actually said to each other, but it could be very easily looked at that way.
People do that with trauma too, right? You had it worse, or you think you have it bad, And the thing is that it's all really bad. I think there are things that comparatively do suck more than others. Like you lost your mother, and I can replace my things. That is true.
But you almost died.
Yes.
So let's not lose sight of that.
Right. That is true. But even just saying, like, we can recognize and honor like the truth of the scenario. You cannot have your homeowner's insurance reproduce your mother, right? I can. Does it still suck? Yes. And it's not a comparison. It's just honoring both are true, right?
Right. Both of these can be true, which, is a real learning curve.
Because we operate, the society like shoves in our face, like it's either this or that, it's all or nothing, it's black or white. And the truth is, like, most things are gray, but we're not given ample and adequate opportunity to actually be in the gray. It's just all or nothing. So when it's a practice, I feel like, to be in the gray. Sometimes I hang out in those all or nothing spaces too, and then I have to rein it back in and practice the gray.
Yeah. So then I ask you this. Have you found that as you've continued to evolve or grow or shift or see the world through a different lens, has that made it more difficult to make friends?
Mm-hmm.
And or have you lost friendships? Or has there been the slow fade because of?
I think, like, yes to all of that. And I actually, again, didn't really, plan for this, but I recently had, I'm gonna, if I butcher her business name, I am sorry, and I'll like recorrect it in the notes, wherever the notes are, I don't know. But it's like Sunrise Mental Health Midwifery, I think, and Dawn is the practitioner, right? And so I have followed her on social media, really liked her stuff, and I finally was like, F it, I'm gonna reach out. She doesn't take insurance, but whatever. It's the amount of time and energy and stuff that she spends. It's worth it. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. And there's going to be a whole real person behind this social media thing. And I met her, and it was so like great to meet somebody who had some similar ideologies with like education and how children should be treated, and that is really kind of not the masses and the general understanding around that. And it was like, oh my gosh, it's so great, like, because we both sort of joked that we like don't like people, but it's not that we don't like people, it's kind of like we're just afraid to interact with people these days. I don't know, it takes so much energy to do that. So there's some, because of these evolutions and shifts and kind of an unsubscribing to the dominant narrative, whatever that dominant narrative is, white supremacy, patriarchy, capitalism, the way you raise children, heteronormative behavior, all, you know what I mean? That you're like, where are my people? Like, and who can I say this to? Especially when you're operating in your own little silos. Like, she has her practice. It's only her, and she bounces around and does her work with people with vaginas, and then I do my work in my little hole, but I don't interact with like the general public that often. It's just these like little holes. So it was like kind of cool to connect in that way and be like, oh my gosh, this is so nice, And so I think that being harder to meet people sometimes, or to put yourself out there and say, what do I say to the general public? Because they're going to be like, what kind of anarchist ass shit is this?
Right.
Which I do love anarchy. But that it's just like, I would say rejection, because I'm comfortable with them being like, girl, you're a mess. I'm okay with that, but like, where are your people, right? When you're doing all this work all the time, and there's much more work to do. I'm not done. It's just the continued evolution of all this.
Well, I think that's the key, right? You recognize that you've unwittingly, subconsciously subscribed to the more dominant narratives, and that you're able to point the mirror at yourself and unravel, unlearn, and keep doing the work. And the work is very hard, and there honestly aren't a lot of people that can take that ride.
Well, because it's and it's not even maybe a little, I mean, we all judge people, it's not like we don't, but like, I'm not necessarily judging. I understand that it's, Marcus and I have talked about it, like, it's kind of hard to like live in the society when you like unveil the shit, and be like, everything is exploitative and dominance oriented, and I mean, it's kind of hard, and sometimes I can swipe you into some depression. Like, how do you live in this society and like know all this stuff and keep on like trying to find joy when most everything is touched by this trash, everything we participate in? It kind of does make me just want to stay in my little hole and be like, I don't want to come outside.
Which shrinks friendship circles, which makes it harder to, I mean, as an adult, regardless, it's hard to make friends. things are just different. I mean,
well, meaningful for like, can you BS with people and be like, that's my colleague and da-da-da. Yeah, but I think if we keep doing this stuff and we keep saying like, I want to have real conversations and meaningful conversations, and I don't want to talk about things that I don't know. I'm not trying to
periphery and like small talk,
or like
and
not as much depth. It's just not.
Like small talk is fine. Like I'm not. Every person that I meet, I'm not having an in-depth, meaningful, enlightened conversation.
It's meant for...
I can do it, but if I'm with people of meaning to me, I want it to be a little bit deeper. That doesn't mean that it has to be so serious and there can't be laughing and joking and let's talk about the weather, kind of stuff. But I am very inquisitive and curious and like to learn.
And the authenticity piece, like, I think, you earlier shared something that was funny when Marcus and I were just sitting around and you're like, this is something I do. So that's what it is, right? And I don't mean to be elusive. I'm just, because I don't want to, but I love that that's something you felt like you wanted to share and could share, because it's like something that in, other relationships or maybe earlier in life, like you wouldn't share a little quirkiness about you because you're like, I don't want you to think
judge
I'm a weirdo.
Me. Right, exactly. You're
I want to hear the weirdo.
1,000% true, because younger Crystal and still older Crystal can be very insecure.
Of course.
And
but we don't want to hide it anymore.
Not anymore, which I think that if my teenage self were to meet my 40-something-year-old self, she obviously would not believe that, like, how I move through the world now.
Yeah.
And I'm more confident than I used to be.
Yes.
Probably more confident than I was 2 years ago. And that in and of itself does change the dynamics of friendships in general. And it's like, either you get on the train or you get off. Like I can't come to a standstill because you're not in a place where you also want to continue to grow and evolve. And I think maybe a little controversial, but I think sometimes friendship breakups are the best thing that we can have for our own well-being and our own growth. Because if you stop and think about, and this is for the listeners too, if you have friends that you're no longer friends with, maybe there was something significant that happened, maybe there wasn't, but think about who you were with that person or those people, and think about where you are today, and would you have had the same trajectory? And I know for myself, and I've said it all along, like, I wouldn't be where I am today if I had continued to just surround myself with still good people. Yeah. But not as, like, I don't want to even say outgoing, although I can be, and some people are very surprised by the fact that I'm shy and introverted. That's only if you know me, you know that part of me. But, wanting to explore and have adventures, no matter what that is, and to dive into yoga. And I mean, I went to my first yoga retreat by myself in 2018. Legit woke up one day and said, I think I want to go to a yoga retreat. Let me just Google that. Oh, there's one in Cape May, New Jersey. Sure, I'll go by myself. I'll figure out how to take the ferry and do the things. And, I met some amazing people.
That you're still friends with?
That I'm still friends with, and went to Costa Rica with, and, have been there for me throughout the ups and downs of the past few years. So I think that had I not had that dissolving of certain friendships or relationships, I wouldn't have taken that step. I wouldn't have. And I guess really, if I'm sitting here processing it out loud, I guess there was something missing.
Yeah.
And I had to find it outside of.
Right. And when the friendships do dissolve, whether, again, it's your choice or it's the other person's choice, it clears a little bit of the space, right? So if you had these, like, friendship breakups or just kind of fading away or whatever, and it created more space and you were not feeling connected or in a community of a sort, and you were like, I think I'm going to do a yoga retreat. I'll go by myself and see what's up, because you wanted to meet other people because you could just go do a yoga class,
Well,
right? But you
right.
wanted to meet other people.
Yeah, and in true Crystal fashion, I roomed with somebody that I had never met before.
Mm-hmm.
And I have never shared a room with anybody that I've never known before.
Mm-hmm.
Even in college, I knew my roommate and subsequent roommates after that. But it was just me and her in this hotel room. And we had connected prior to, like, we were emailing, and I got a good sense. You know, I vibed with her and I felt like really good energy. Mm-hmm. And I literally told her, and Allie, this is for you. She already knows this because we still joke about it, that I was worried she was going to murder me in the middle of the night. Like, you're a stranger. Like, I don't know you.
This is police-based victim services, Crystal.
and then to me, Allie, like, she's not gonna, that's not her vibe. She's very laid back and easygoing, and her child is the same exact way. So yeah, I had that worry, but literally within 3 seconds of meeting her, it was great. And, you know,
and I think that's also neat, because I could say maybe there was a point in my life or in other people's lives, maybe that point for them is right now, but like, where if someone would share that kind of information, maybe it's not just a point in your life, maybe it's just part of like where you are now, we could be offended. How could you think I would do such a thing? You know?
I mean, she wasn't offended. She was like, why would you even think that? I was like, yeah, but also you don't understand.
Right. Let me help you understand
Let me help you
Job.
understand. And I was 39 when we met. So speaking about making friendships, and she's 10 years younger than me. Mm-hmm. So,
because it's really actually special and awesome when we can be in circles of women, and I would argue people, but specifically women being in multi-generational spaces, because again, we don't honor aging in our culture in a meaningful way. Even if you say, like, obviously women aging, they just get invisible.
Some cultures, absolutely are elder centric and even matriarchal.
Yeah, right. And live with their aging parents, come to live with that. It's very American to do it the way we do it. But if we, again, unsubscribe from the ideology that getting older is some kind of terrible thing, and really honor folks who are at different points in their life, it's neat to be in those circles, and someone who's in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and it's not like I'm telling you what to do but it's just, we have lived experience and we have some wisdom.
We do, and different lived experiences. I mean, she's from New Jersey. Everybody that I went on, not everybody at that one, but that we went to Costa Rica, all but one of those people were from the retreat in Cape May, and they're all from New Jersey. Mm-hmm. Different ages, mm-hmm. and all different lived experiences, which you're right, this multi-generational community basically. And it's actually really special and deeply sad that it's been dismantled on purpose. Yeah, mm-hmm. Well, and so a couple of interesting things. Have you and Marcus watched the most recent episode of Reservation Dogs?
We sure have not.
I'm not going to spoil anything,
okay.
But hot tip, if you're not watching Reservation Dogs out there on Hulu, you're missing one of the greatest shows that's on TV currently and maybe has ever been made, and highlighting the stories of Indigenous people.
Mm-hmm.
And
specifically centering around a group of Indigenous teens.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that was talked about on the most recent episode, again, not going to spoil anything, was appreciating the wisdom of the elders.
How funny.
And liking to sit with them to hear their stories, even if we're not doing anything. Mm-hmm. I'm still learning from them.
Right. I just saw something, I think probably online, that was like, I'm redefining fiction and nonfiction, and as like fiction is fake and nonfiction is true, where fiction is an imaginative way of learning and nonfiction is like learning through facts or whatever. And I was like, what a neat way to kind of look at.
Yeah.
Not that their stories are fiction. Do you know what I mean? But
no, but storytelling in general is how the word was passed,
mm-hmm.
which was, it is a book by somebody that I can't remember his name right now.
It's okay. It'll be in the notes again, wherever that is.
Well, I will look for it. But storytelling, how important it is to build community, to even build friendships, and to learn about your history and your culture and your ancestors, or, you know, even in people telling their stories of trauma or grief, you know, there's this shared experience that doesn't make you feel so alone or isolated, right? We have this thought that we're the only one that this has ever happened to in the history of the world. Right. And then when you start digging a little bit deeper, you find out that there are more people that have this experience, and that's not really that's not going to be found out if we don't have these stories. And
I feel like it's not by accident that we just don't have time. We don't have time. There's no time to sit and tell a story. We've got this and this and this and this and this to do. Whereas if we stopped, slowed down, were quote unquote non-productive, and just told stories to each other, that connection organically happens and we don't feel alone. Imagine if we were much more visible about you know, everybody just telling stories. You just don't feel alone. I think that's, you know, part of the reason that social media is so powerful is because it connects people and their storytelling. We were just talking about people preferring to see people's lives more than just posts, right? Because it makes them feel more connected. And not alone.
In the age of social media, we are connected yet still disconnected. And I think being more personal and sharing more of your story and about your life, of what you're willing to share, right? It helps people to feel connected to you, and also not so alone, not in the void of stuff. So the name of that book that I was referencing, it's called How the Word is Passed: A Reckoning with the History of Slavery Across America by Clint Smith. And he... I'll just read the first paragraph of, you know, what Amazon says, but buy from your local bookstores. Beginning in his hometown of New Orleans, Clint Smith leads the reader on an unforgettable tour of monuments and landmarks, those that are honest about the past and those that are not, that offer an intergenerational story of how slavery has been central in shaping our nation's collective history and ourselves. And I haven't read this book. He was a guest on a podcast that I listened to a couple of years ago, and it was remarkable, his interview and his story in this book, which, again, history is not, it's really up for interpretation, I guess, if you will.
Or whose lens.
Yeah, whose lens is a story being told. So this is important to be able to have these stories told through a lens that isn't through the lens of white supremacy.
Yeah.
And, you know, building community and all of that we're talking about. I've been watching this series on Netflix called like Live to 100, The Blue Zones. So there are these pockets of places around the world where they have a abnormally large amount of population of people 100 or older. And so this guy is going around and interviewing people and going to these places and spaces in the world. And I have been taking notes as I watch this on, you know, not only how to improve my own well-being, but also what are some connected threads. And every single one of them, not only is it like eating nutritious and from the land that in which you're not all the junk in your food, every single one of them is community and connection.
How about
every
that?
single one of them. And I think that when they were in Sardinia, there are no retirement homes or nursing homes in this area. All of the elderly are taken care of by their community, their family, which he gave a statistic on the number, like not being in a facility increases life expectancy by, I'm just going to say 7 years. That could be right or wrong. It's written down in a notebook at home. But connection, right? Community, friendship, having your feeling like you matter.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
you're not forgotten. Your stories are important.
Right.
And that's something that was being said,
Right.
hearing about the yesteryears
Yeah.
and how things were
yeah.
done and about your own history.
Yeah, your own family history. And I think, in our society, we obviously don't honor elderly, period, but also who would be the folks taking care of the elderly, right? Like it would be maybe folks around, if you're fortunate enough to have your parents live, all the way through a normal life expectancy or a typical life expectancy, it would be the people who are a part of the workforce, right? And so we can have them not being a part of the workforce and being productive just to take care of some old folks. There's no time, and we're all dependent on our salaries. We can't afford it. So we put them in these homes.
Well, really, because children and elderly are not really contributing to the capitalist structure in which we live. So you really don't have, if your worth is measured by your productivity.
Right. And then the people who are the ones who are productive, so to speak, they'd have to remove themselves from the workforce to actually connect and support and take care of their elderly, like in these blue zone spaces, right? And that just can't be. So what are we going to do? It's the same. There's just simply not a regard for caretaking in society, period. Whether it's of the children and of the elderly, like you said, the non-productives,
or of new moms.
Well, for sure, definitely that. But that's also kind of related to the children part of it, right? It's like, put your kids somewhere, put your old people somewhere. You got to get back to work. And in these other spaces and places that are, I haven't watched the series, I started it, but it sounds like radically different from our world. They're living more enriching and fulfilling and longer lives. They're not just 100 and like falling apart. They're living like, coherent.
There was a man that lives in Costa Rica. I want to say maybe he's 100, maybe he's 102. He looks like he's 77. He's still wrangling cattle and splitting wood.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, you stay active. So in our culture, it's exercise, go to the gym, do these workouts, where in all of these zones, the people, part of what's contributing to their longer life expectancy is constant movement of like doing their tasks, whether that's gardening, meeting friends for pickleball or tennis, walking up steep hills. Sardinia, I'm looking at you, which was very reminiscent of when Jane and I were in Cinque Terre in Italy, where, you're doing nothing but walking up some real steep hills, and they're building their muscle tone, and that's all they know. Like, this is where they live. This is where they grew up. There aren't escalators or anything,
cubicles,
or any of that stuff to walk up your the incline in your village, which it's hard, especially when you're an American who doesn't walk up steep inclines, especially here in Delaware with your below sea level environment. So yeah, I guess if we're circling back to friendship breakups, I think the other side of that, right, this duality, is the beauty and the strength in friendships and community and really your chosen family.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, as I think about the friendship breakups that I had, they didn't start until I was in my late 30s and early 40s. And I remember thinking, like, I've known these people for like 20 years or 15 years. And like, how could I just,
what's wrong with me?
Yeah, I would feel bad or feel sad. I mean, I think feeling sad about a termination of a relationship is fun. But I just wonder, like, what was I doing wrong, or was I doing something wrong by no longer participating in some of these friendships, But I think about I still firmly stand in, while that relationship is no longer going to be a primary one for me, I wouldn't hate to see them. I would have lunch with them. I would catch up with them. It wouldn't be one of my in-depth type of friendships, because not every single friendship has to be this deep connection, like we said. That some friendships are not meant for that. Some of them are more peripheral, and that's okay. Or just catching up, and I'm glad you're well. Like, of course, I don't want anything bad to happen. Just like when we have intimate partner breakups, that's not typically, we don't necessarily want something bad to happen. It's just like, I don't want to hang out with you anymore. It's been fun. We had a ride. It just isn't for me anymore. And it doesn't take away the fact that it hurts your feelings. It can hurt your feelings. I remember being the breaker-upper of a long-term intimate partner relationship, and I was very sad about having to initiate it because we had a history. Maybe I thought I was going to marry this person. And it was sad to see it end, even though I was the initiator,
right.
But in the friendship breakups, like I would still, I've said many a times, like I don't really actually think I ended the relationships. I just no longer participated in them in the same way.
Yeah, it was like a slow fade type of thing.
Well, because I no longer participated in them the same way, they no longer survived, I guess. They didn't, if I was the one who was always initiating
or being the sounding board,
or like wanting to have different kinds of conversations, but that not happening, I think, I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so then the other person maybe didn't reach out to me, and so it's not like, well, I broke up with them, they broke up with me. It doesn't actually matter. It's just it devolved.
It's just a slow fade type of thing. And I kind of view that kind of stuff, and I had this conversation with Jane not so long ago, but the way I have approached like some friendship breakups is, I think, how do I feel about it right now? Like, do I feel like I'm missing that person, that I have this emptiness inside of me, or am I okay? And if I sit with that and feel like I'm okay, then I feel like it was what was supposed to happen. Yeah. And so far, all of the friendships that have kind of come to an end, I feel that way about them. Like, they served a purpose, reasons and seasons, right? They
had some great times.
Great
memories. Yeah.
In some significant parts of my adolescence and adulthood, and, and then here we are. And that brings me to, I'm reading this book called Good Morning, Mourning, Honest Conversations About Grief, which is based upon a podcast. And they're talking about reframing friendships in relation to grief. And they say, not all of your friends are going to be able to truly level with you and your loss, but it doesn't mean you can't still have relationship with them. Yeah. And then they, reference the Greek philosopher Aristotle, who identified 3 types of friends: friends of virtue, friends of utility, and friends of pleasure. So the ride or dies, aka the friends of virtue, are those friends that show up when the going gets tough. Yeah. So they're going to be the people that you call when you're a messy, crying person in a ball, right? Yeah. And then the convenient ones, the AKA friends of utility, are the ones who you only really speak to when you need something, and vice versa. You probably wouldn't call them when you're having a meltdown, but if you need a recommendation for a probate lawyer, they'd be first on the list. Yeah. And then the good timers, your friends of pleasure, these are the people you can rely on for a cracking time. They're from Australia and the UK, so for a good time, but perhaps not for emotional support. So they're more surface level. Yeah. And I think that is really beneficial, especially when having this conversation. It doesn't mean one is right or wrong. No. But it's just like you have a different pair of pants depending upon what the situation is. It's kind of the same with friends. Right. Like, who are those people that you can rely on? And
I think they could morph into some of those categories, right? Like where you might have started off as, I just go out and have a good old time with them, and then it just evolved, or it devolved, where they're kind of on a little bit more the peripheral, and I don't recall much anymore for those kinds of things. Yeah. So, in this book, at the end of every little chapter, there is like a journal prompt, I guess, if you will, or something that you can do. And
they, suggest making a friendship bucket and assess who belongs in each one of them. And this isn't, they're speaking specifically to grief, but it says the goal here isn't to cull or, cut out every person who hasn't stepped up for you in your grief, but to be realistic about your relationships.
Yeah.
So if you have the expectation of a good time friend to be there when you have a meltdown,
right?
You have to
your expectations.
You have to recalibrate your expectations and be a little bit more realistic so that when that isn't the person that you can rely on, you know that you already you have that from the beginning. And you might find that the least likely people are the people that you end up connecting with, even if they're strangers on the internet that you meet via social media or a support group or a whatever, right?
Or some girl you met in Chicago that you're like, why is she obsessed with this kidney bean thing? And now
are you talking about me, Jennifer? I am. Yes, she's referencing a conference that we went to and the bean. So if you're not familiar with the bean in Chicago, look it up. It's a silver, basically kidney bean that
was worth it, though,
it's reflective and really cool. So yeah, that I think all of that is really important in trying to.
Yeah, I think it's actually a good exercise to do, like, for anyone at any moment, right? Not just in your grief and loss, but just, it's funny that you're telling me that, because I sort of do look at relationships like that. I don't always share it out loud because I'm like, is that weird? Is that weird, or is that really kind of, I don't know what the right word is, but like transactional, I guess, I don't think it is. But because this is validating that I would think of people in buckets, right? Like in my mind, it's like squares, and I'm like, that person is in that one and that person's in that one. It's not to say like that's where you have to stay, right? But it's just like, I'm not gonna go to that one because this is what there are this level friend, that level friend, and it's just really, truly realistic expectations. It's nothing else.
Right. It's like you're not going to go to the hardware store looking for medication that is going to alleviate pain. Right. Or vice versa. Right.
Or you're not going to go to the pharmacy, but can I get a hammer?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have a friend, my friend Jillian, has said before, not everybody gets every part of you.
Yeah, that's a good, and also like, I think that's helpful to like remember sometimes too, is like, yeah, like we don't have to share all our interesting pieces of us or quirky pieces of us with everyone, because there's
a time and a place, and
it's I feel like it is earned, right? Like how our connections are, and it's not like you have to earn that from me, but it's just we earn it from one another. We earn it through time, we earn it through evidence, we earn it through interaction, support, and it's organic. It's not like we're keeping note like, did she earn it today, right? But it's just organic. So I think like when we allow ourselves to think about relationships and people that way, I think it's helpful for ourselves. It's helpful to, and for our relationships to be like, well, this person's in this category, right? Whether it's one of those three categories, and am I good with that? Am I good with the fact that is the depth of our relationship? Or do I wish it was more? Was it more before and it's no longer? And I'm not real sure. I just want to interact. And I think that is what happened to a friendship of mine that was like 15 years. And it was a really meaningful friendship. And I still have very good memories, and I would never regret that friendship. But and it did, when I was younger, it really did have, at the time of what I thought depth was, it had depth. It had meaning. It had joy. I lived with the person. It was a great experience. They taught me a lot of things. And I really enjoy that. And through time and through, our own evolutions in life, that person then became something that we only talked about nostalgia or that time. And I wanted to, evolve into where I was in life and talk about harder things and deeper things.
Well, that's what you had that connected you, your past. There was nothing that was connecting you and moving you forward. It was
Right.
all a previously lived experience.
Right. And while living it was great, and even while being nostalgic about it and going our own ways, maybe, finding long-term partners and moving in or getting married or doing whatever and still maintaining that friendship, but all that held it together was nostalgia or going to escape my I'm going to say escape, but just like go back in time. But I wanted to still meet with that person on a more deeper level about what was happening in their life now and my life now, and see each other in an
adult, like
in a more, it just at the next level kind of way. And they didn't really want to do that, conscious or not. That's just, and it became clear to me because I am somebody who looks at human behavior and patterns and that kind of stuff. Sometimes without even trying, right? But sometimes definitely trying and trying to understand that breakup that still does have, still holds grief. I still feel sad about it. And I do wish we could have kept evolving together and kept knowing each other at this stage and this stage and this stage. It just wasn't, unfortunately, meant to be. And I'm not that person who's like, well, we have known each other for 15 years, so we should maintain the friendship just because of time. Like, time is not... That's not the only reason.
No.
It has to have the depth. And when you have limited time and energy, like we all often do.
Which I was just going to say, right? We often talk a lot about how time is our most precious resource.
Energy, too.
Our time and energy. And those are things that we're not, especially time, we're not going to get it back. So if I have a limited, finite amount and I'm more intentional about where I place it and who I spend it with, then there is this recalibration of having to kind of have a hierarchy, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
And when you've experienced a significant event, whether it's, for me, my mom's death, for you, and your family, your house burning down and narrowly escaping with your life, it really does kind of take the rose colors off of the lens. And it's like, oh, okay, right. So do I really want to spend my time with this person that I've known for 15 years, but I don't really get anything out of it? Or do I want to even choosing to be at home by yourself is still a viable option?
Yep.
Because you are the most important relationship that you're ever going to have.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it really is like, how much energy and time do I have, and what do I get out of this relationship? Does it feel like it's filling my cup?
Right?
And was there a point in the relationship? Were there many points in that relationship where it did? Yeah, absolutely. That was 26-year-old Jen. That was maybe even 32-year-old Jen, or whatever. And choosing different life paths definitely can disrupt that, because then you're not on the same path, or you haven't chosen the same life choices or whatever. It just doesn't have to be. That doesn't actually have to be the disruption. Like, you do not have children, I do have children. However, that does not make our relationship, like, you don't understand. Like, you don't have to understand. It doesn't. There's just so much more to it than just.
I mean, it does, I don't want to say complicate, but it does change the dynamic of our friendship, because whereas I might have a more open schedule, right? You don't necessarily have that, because you have these little people who are depending upon you, and you have to get from school and take care of and do the things. And so I think that for me, since we do have a balanced friendship, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm not like rolling my eyes like, your kids, like, why are they always like taking all of your time? Why can't we do stuff? And oftentimes it's spending time with the kids are included in that, or what have you.
Well, and it even is okay if you are like, and this is why I don't have kids, like.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, that's the truth sometimes.
Yeah.
It's pretty much anybody's kids.
Yeah, so it's exactly. You're like, yeah, and so like that, but that is still my point, right? Like, you can be in this scenario, you can have chosen to have kids and not, right? And still respect the other people. And I think you had briefly mentioned, like, oh, she's not, what does she need to relax for? She doesn't have kids. Like, that, I still honor you and your experience, and it doesn't matter if you have kids or not. Like, you can honor each other in different places and stages, and and still have a fulfilling relationship. You know what I mean? And I know you met me when I already did have kids. So, in this previous relationship, I didn't have kids. We were, in our 20s, and then and then I did have kids, and then it did change things. It just doesn't have to, but it is okay if it does. And then that can continue, maybe the divide continues, and then it is what it is. That is all okay. Because then it creates space. Like, I'm sure I still, but would I have met you if I still was like holding on to that friendship?
Who knows?
I don't know.
Who knows? Or, I also think that if I value you and our friendship and what you bring to my life and vice versa, then I'm willing to put in the extra effort, work, energy that it takes to maintain a friendship, even if it's not necessarily an in-person situation. Yeah. So maybe we have a 10-hour phone call. Yeah. You laugh, but that happens.
Yes.
Or, a video chat or something like that, which may include, we're eating lunch or whatever, but that's just how we have to, make it's a relationship, it's a commitment, and it's important. Right. So we do what we have to do to make it work.
Right. And I think, again, it is, like I said, like, it is okay to meet somebody and they weren't this way and now they are this way for whatever reason. A traumatic event, a grief-stricken event, you guys did have kids or you didn't have kids, and now this person has chosen to have kids, and it altered the fabric of everything, and that's okay. So, like, it just doesn't work out for me anymore. That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
But I think, and the expectation, when you met me, I did have kids, so it wasn't like that wasn't a shift that you had to deal with per se,
which has happened in other relationships with friends.
And either way, it's okay. Even if we just take the kids out of it, when you're two single folks and then one of you decides to partner, and then that person is spending a lot more time with that partner, and then you're sort of like, well, we're not around, and they didn't have a partner when I first met them. Can we still remain friends? Often, yes, right? We have a very big understanding for that. Like, oh, sure, you're just with your partner now. Even if we have our feelings about it, things can change. And some friendships, like, the reasons and seasons, some friendships aren't meant to go further than that. And that is okay. It can still have pain and grief, and that is okay. And I think that's something I just revisit a lot, because there still is a sadness for the loss of really all the friendships that had to no longer be.
Right.
Except one. But it was like, you can go ahead. But there were the majority of them, like I said, I wonder about them. I think about them. I hope they're well. Sometimes on social media, they're in my feed, and I can be like, oh, good for that. Like, and then I just hope for good things, but it doesn't always mean that the connection would be there. But I would still have that lunch with them or conversation with them if they had decided they wanted to, I don't know, rekindle the friendship or have a conversation. What happened, But like you said, do I feel a loss? I feel sad, but I don't feel like something's missing. No longer having those friendships, right? Sometimes even relief comes, and you're like, oh, gosh, I didn't realize how much energy I was putting out, and then maybe how much I wasn't getting back. But that was the dynamic of one of those friendships. It was me giving a lot of this specific type of energy,
right?
And again, it's not that they provided stuff too. It wasn't like, oh, I just had to do so much and forget it. It's just when I no longer could do that, caretaking for other people because I was empty and lost.
Right. Which I think is a good place for us to start to wrap up. But, this is all related to grief too. And we've been pretty outspoken about the direction of our podcast. So perhaps on our next episode, we can talk about, non-death losses, which include friendships and, the different facets of grief. But before we wrap up, and having this in-depth conversation about community and female friendships, which we've talked a lot about on this podcast, I do want to say that we will be hosting a goddess celebration next month. So myself and a friend, Lindsay, are going to be hosting that at the Healing Cottage on Friday the 13th. In October, and we picked that date specifically because of some interesting research that Lindsay found surrounding the history of Friday the 13th. So we would love to have people join us. You can register on our website. We will be having a raffle for a goddess box. So there will be different products in there available
From local
artisans. And once we have the specifics, we'll post on our socials a picture of all of that. And $10 from every ticket sale is going to Postnatal Supports Advocates, or PSA, which is now a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So just hot tip, if you're looking to offload some money as we get to the end of the year, you can make a tax-deductible donation to Postnatal Support Advocates. And if there are any questions or concerns around like the Goddess celebration, PSA, the services that they offer and what all of that means, you can feel free to reach out to us on social media at Postnatal Support Advocates, at Healing Cottage, Delaware, at Yoga with Crystal 0925, and at Cohabitating with Grief, which is my new platform for all things grief. So thank you everybody for tuning in and sitting here with us and sharing community and storytelling. So we'll see you next time.
We did it.
Tag team back again.
Oh my God. That's definitely gonna be a soundbite. It's gonna get the license for it. Do your tag team.
Tag team back again.
It's tag team back
again. Something for all you people out there for the 90s and 2000s, I guess.
And my man Steve Rowland, we're kicking the flow. And it goes a little something like this. Tag team, back again. Check it, direct it, let's begin. Party on, party people, let me hear some noise. DC's in the house, jump, rejoices. There's a party over here, a party over there. Wave your hands in the air, shake the dairy, yeah. These three words mean you're getting busy. Whoop, there it is, Hitman.